What's up, everybody? I'm Camarray.
And I'm Zaiah, and this is a Music Report Card, Face-Off Edition.
Today's Face-Off Edition, we are going to take a look at the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest artist of all time, Michael Jackson. And who else could go against Michael Jackson but his baby sister, Janet? I'm Team Janet today.
I'm Team Michael all day.
Okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's go ahead. Well, I mean, it goes without saying, Michael and Janet have some of the biggest influences, the biggest careers of all time. I happen to share a birthday with Michael Jackson. But we're going to talk about a couple of your favorite Michael or Janet memories.
Well, the favorite Janet memory is the Super Bowl moment.
That's your favorite?
No, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, that's
my favorite. I would say my favorite Michael Jackson moment. I want to focus on him because it's all about him for me. Michael Jackson, my favorite Michael Jackson moment was when James Brown was performing. And he pretty much announced that he saw Michael Jackson in the room and called Michael up, and Michael literally went up, spun. I mean, everybody just raised to their feet, and it was this crazy moment where I realized, wow, this dude is really the man. Like, so respected, and just went up there and just gave a couple moves, spun around, and walked up the stage, and everybody was just falling out, just lost it.
I thought you were gonna say when he did the BET Awards and came and put the cloak on him.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I thought that's what you were going to say.
No.
I would say my favorite Michael moment is, I can't remember which tour it was. I want to say it was the Bad tour. But he, like, before the lifts were invented, like, he had the lift where it, like, came out, he, like, just stood there for, like, 10 minutes.
Oh,
and the crowd is just going crazy and falling out and just having fucking tantrums, and it's just like all of this craziness going on, and he's just standing there like, yeah, I'm him, like, scream for me. Like, he just did, and it comes, Janet does the same thing in some of her shows, and it's like, wow, it's such an amazing thing that you don't even have to say a word, and just your mere presence is causing these people to just go nuts. Like, I think that's just the most incredible thing. My favorite Janet moment, I would say, is I'm a huge Janet fan, and so the Velvet Rope tour was the first time I saw Janet, and I was maybe 12 years old, and I just remember her I think she may have been the first artist, female-wise, that I remember bringing a guy up on stage, and she brought this guy up, and he lost his mind. Like, she tied him to the little chair or whatever. And then she's like doing, what was it, Velvet Rope or Rope Burn, I can't remember the song, but she's doing all these sexy moves, and he is up there like losing his mind. Like, that's I feel like Janet kind of set the tone. I know Destiny's Child has done it. Female artists from then on have started to do that, where they bring a guy up on stage and, you know, give him like this little sexy seduction moment. And so that, for me, was one of my biggest Janet Jackson moments.
I actually forgot all about that moment. I like that moment also, but I really, like, growing up hearing Janet Jackson, I really fell in love with the Every Time song.
Oh, wow.
And the video.
Oh, yeah, the water.
Where she was in the water. Like, that was just to see the sexiness of everything, like how it all happened, how she went into the water. I felt like I'd never seen a video or anything that creative done with water. So that actually probably I would have to say was my favorite Janet moment. Just that video growing up.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, videos. We'll get into videos.
We'll get
into videos in just a moment. But let's go ahead and start. So the way this face-off is going to work is we're going to put head-to-head Michael versus Janet. We're going to put their singles, their albums, their videos, and their overall impact against each other, head-to-head. So let's go ahead and talk about their singles.
Go ahead. Let's talk about it.
Okay, let's talk about their singles. Okay, so I think
Janet.
So I think it's important to note Janet has 10 #1 singles that don't feature anybody else. She's not jumping on someone else's bandwagon. Not saying Michael did with Paul McCartney or anything, but I'm just saying that Janet had 10 #1 singles all on her own. What do you have to say with Mr.
Michael had 13.
He had 13, but most of them were with other people. That
It doesn't matter. Michael is a creator, and regardless if those other people were involved or not, he still had an impact on the creative process of creating that, and still was a part of that. If you're called by a Paul McCartney to do something, you got to be doing something. You got to be somebody. So regardless of the fact that he's pulled into certain records with people, that's who he is.
Okay, so this is where I disagree. I feel like this not just with Michael, but I feel like especially I hate to name drop with Nicki, but I feel like when people have you on their record, I feel like that is their record, and yes, you may add your zhuzh and your sauce on the song, but I feel like that is that person's song. Like, The Boy Is Mine is Brandy's song. Like these people are jumping on and over. Granted, you're making the song better, but I feel like that is not your number one single. Like, you can't.
But either way, it doesn't matter. When it's all said and done, I am taking my artistry, you are taking your artistry. We are merging those two things together, and we are making something that is magical that the world is falling in love with. And you can't say that it would be. You can't say that it would be just as impactful if one or the other wasn't on it. We don't know, because that's not what happened. What we know is that it was a number one, right? And we know that these two people came together, or however many people came together to make this a number one. Period. It doesn't matter whose song it was or who did what. The Boy Is Mine. Brandy had just as much going on as Monica had going on. They both brought their own different sounds to do this toying back and forth thing, which people fell in love with, that idea of them going back and forth in this beef that they possibly had with one another. That's what made that moment what it was.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel a different way. I feel like the artist that is credited with the actual song, like if it's Paul McCartney featuring Michael Jackson, I feel like that song is Paul McCartney's number one single. It does not mean, in my opinion, that it is Michael Jackson's number one single. And I mean, he does have his, few number one singles that he, does have on his own. Mm-hmm. But I feel like Janet was able to achieve the same. Like, if you look at and compare Michael's solo number ones to Janet's number ones, they're equal. They both have 10. And the other songs that Michael has, the 13 that he has number ones, he's credited on somebody else's song.
Did he walk across the stage? Did they both get an award for it?
Not that song.
Is his name still included?
It is.
When you look it up, does it say 13 and 10, or does it say 10 and 10?
If you look at
moving right along.
No, we can't move right along from that. Michael Jackson has 10 number ones, and Janet Jackson has 10 number ones.
But what are the facts that we see online? That's what I'm asking you right now. So.
I mean, but I can go write an article.
No, we go to Billboard.com. What are you talking about, an article?
I'm saying,
if you go to Billboard.com, you're going to see that Michael Jackson had 13 number ones, and Janet had 10. Thank you. Moving right along. Let's talk a little bit about the albums.
All right, so let's talk about the albums. Go ahead, since you're so amped about Michael. Well, let's put this out there, since you're so educated on everything. 3 of Michael's biggest albums, Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad, all came out before SoundScan, which, I don't know if you know anything about SoundScan, but SoundScan is the company that actually physically counts albums sold. 3 of his biggest albums, again, Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad, were all released prior to. So, I don't know if you're aware, but back in the day, retailers would call and say, hey, this album is selling well, and this is the number one album of the week. This is what it is. All right, so with that being said, there are no solidified facts that Michael Jackson has actually sold the amount of albums that he has on record.
We ain't gonna downplay you, Michael. You did what you did. Regardless of how it was reported, Michael Jackson, let's talk about Thriller. Let's talk about it.
No SoundScan back then.
It doesn't matter about that. Counted. That does not matter.
Nobody was
Thriller was the number one album. It's now number 2, I believe. But Thriller was number 1 for a nice minute. And I think 2017 or 18 is when it got bumped down to number 2. That's first of all, to be a black man, whether he bleached himself or not, we're gonna talk about that. To be a black man and be able to do that and have the number 1 album over Beatles, all these people that were just people just went crazy over. That's ridiculous.
And it was a great album. Great album. Lots of. But you know what? I didn't realize until I did research on this topic today was Thriller wasn't a #1 single.
No.
And it was his last single. I didn't realize. I guess because I wasn't born yet, but I didn't realize that Thriller wasn't a #1 single, and it was the last single from the album, which is really interesting that video had such an impact. Because I think honestly, the sales really probably took off after Thriller, the single, the actual video was released. But I feel like that's interesting to see that is how that transpired.
I mean, honestly, Thriller wasn't about the song all the way for me. I love the song, don't get me wrong. It was about the image that he gave. It was about the production and how this whole little movie just came together. And that's what Thriller was about for everybody. Everybody spooked everybody, but then the lyrics were also there and they were exciting and thrilling. So,
yeah.
But I think that when I look at all of Michael Jackson's songs, I wouldn't even say that his #1 songs were my favorite songs. There were multiple other songs that I fell in love with outside of the #1s.
Mm-hmm. But let's talk about Janet's albums, the ones that actually did count. She's got a lot of course, the albums, and this is where I really put them head to head because I feel like Michael had some incredible albums. I mean, Thriller, hands down, Bad, Dangerous, some of the most incredible albums probably of all time. But if you take those 3 major albums and then you put them, let's say, against Janet's major 3 albums, Control, Rhythm Nation, and Janet, Michael really has nothing outside of those 3 major albums because his next album was the History album, which really didn't do anything. You Are Not Alone was the #1 record from there. But if you take Janet's next couple albums, they were still banging. Velvet Rope, All For You, Demita Joe, and so on and so on and so on and so forth, still topping the charts.
#1 album still came from Michael Jackson for a minute. Now #2 of all time.
That's great.
So you can talk about all that, but it's all still going to be in the facts. That's just an opinion.
No, that's not an opinion. Michael.
Where's she at? In the where does she fall in the? If you look at the top 100 albums of all time or top 10 albums of all time, where does she fall?
I don't know that information.
That's what I'm saying. But we know, the information we do know is that Michael Jackson was at #1 for a minute with Thriller and then eventually got bumped down to #2.
And that's great.
That's what we do know.
That's great. But, again, if you take that album and you take, like I said, you take his other 2 albums that were major successes. Is that a word? Successes. Janet still, in my opinion, has
and I'm talking about facts. But go ahead.
A greater catalog where she was able to carry past her major successful albums. All of her albums after that still went platinum. Michael's kind of started tanking. After those 3 albums, steadily declining until his untimely death with Invincible was his last album, which really kind of sold dirt.
Yeah. So moving right along, let's talk a little bit about videos.
Okay, videos. I feel like Janet, again, I mean, you can't help but say, Thriller, okay, we're going to throw Thriller in there. Okay, woo, great video, okay? Janet, I feel, has the way bigger videos, way bigger impact. I think she has, and we didn't really talk about this in the beginning, but I think she has impacted a lot of, especially female artists, but I think male artists as far as videos are concerned. I feel like even back to Rhythm Nation, and I've seen other artists do like Pleasure Principle, where they're like the solo female in there, and they're in like this warehouse, and they're doing their choreography. We've seen that time and time again. Mm-hmm. I think that Janet's career, video-wise, doesn't really matter that what was it, like the little aerodynamic thing that she was dancing on, and then she leaned one way, and that thing went like amazing. And then I think it's notable to mention Scream, which I think if we were gonna add both artists in,
right,
the greater good, Janet killed that video. All right, And the last Janet video I want to mention is, of course, since we're going to go with your theory, what's it going to be with Busta Rhymes and Janet Jackson with the fucking
that was
moving outfits in the water and all of that? I mean, granted, I think, again, such incredible videos Janet has done. And I don't know, I just feel like such a style and fashion icon. I think all around, I think she's got it as far as videos are concerned.
Yeah, and I agree, but I just don't feel like they were as epic as what Michael has done. If you look at videos like Smooth Criminal, Billie Jean, Beat It, Do You Remember the Time? Those type of videos and how he created this whole, now we see Beyonce doing Lemonade and doing all these different videos and almost recreating something that he started. I mean, which really we can segue into the overall impact, because that's kind of what I'm getting ready to get into.
Okay, well, let's talk about it. So I feel like this is my thing with Michael, and I love Michael to death. But I feel like with Michael, I think the only downfall that I have from him, and this is just me looking back and doing research, I think he really earned his title King of Pop. But I think that Michael, especially musically, kind of, and you mentioned Remember the Time, I feel like he kind of conformed to what music was at the time to make the albums that he made. If you think about Remember the Time, he rode the wave of New Jack Swing with Teddy Riley. That was the hot thing at the time, and so because he's the King of Pop, he transitioned right on and was like, okay, let me try this, this New Jack Swing thing. Back when in the 80s, where it was kind of like hair bands and rock and roll, that's what he went with. And that's why you get the, like you get all of these different rock and roll themes, or I'm sorry, not rock and roll themes, rock and roll inspired songs. And so I feel like overall impact, I feel like Janet really connected with her producers, and that's why I respect her so much. I feel like she's the background vocal queen. I feel like her background vocals are just some of the best background vocals of all time. But I feel like she really.
What about the lead? Oh, okay.
We won't go there. But I feel like Michael. I feel like Janet connected with her producers.
I'm trying to hear Janet. Hold on, be quiet.
They sound the same.
I can't hear her vocals.
They sound the same. Anyway. Janet connected with her producers and created sounds and movements that would last a lifetime versus Michael kind of conforming musically to what was going on at the time. I mean, if you think about it, at the time, Rhythm Nation was unheard of. Like, that sound was unheard of. When you fast forward all the way to It's All for You, or even some of the stuff that she did with feedback, get the feedback. Like, those, even though Rodney Jerkins was a major, like, she worked with Rodney and she came up, that whole rap thing, like, that she did, like, how about where my
I know,
sign?
yeah, that was all, that's all
like,
great,
it's very, very cutting edge, very, very different, and I feel like Michael just conformed. And granted, he has a major overall impact on the Chris Browns and the Ushers, but I feel like overall, Janet, I mean, she just takes the win.
No, I don't think she takes the win. And I think that we have to also acknowledge that there was a time where rock and roll music was a big thing.
And why not be creative and create your own thing?
You can't, because you're Michael Jackson, and Michael has a song that kind of still grabs that rock and roll feel. So he can absolutely ride that wave if you wanted to. Look at
exactly.
All artists, I feel like when something is popular, all artists kind of conform and jump on that wave. Yes, they do. But even before everything you're talking about, what made Michael Jackson the king, gave him this King of Pop status, was Thriller. So when you get to that point, I feel like everybody gets to this point, every artist gets to this point where they really peak. And I feel like Thriller was where he went to the next level, and then he was able to do whatever he wanted to do from there. If he wanted to ride the wave of do a rock and roll track or conform to these other things, he could do that because he's Michael Jackson. And I feel like as far as the overall impact, if we look at that, yes, I see how Janet has some influences in some of the female artists, but I feel like some of the female artists still do some of the Michael Jackson things, and I think some of the Janet things that Janet does, I still feel like we're from Little Mike. When you look at like Little Mike from Jackson 5. So, and we haven't even touched on that because we're so focused on, you know, Michael Jackson and who Michael Jackson was when he grew up.
Yeah,
but when it's all said and done, this little boy was trained to the T through Jackson 5 and created all types of different things and tried to be innovative, whether the moonwalk came from another place or not. Michael Jackson is who put it on the map, and we still see to this day children still trying to do the moonwalk.
And let's talk about overall impact. Let's think on that. I think, and we didn't mention this earlier, but I think also the fact that Baby Janet was, I feel like, one of the first female singers turned actresses. So without that influence from Janet, I don't know who did it before her. I don't think there was anybody.
But Michael did it because he did it with Smooth Criminal.
No, we're talking about movies.
I get that you're talking about movies.
We're talking about Janet.
He created, right, but Janet was in the Nutty Professor. Janet was in the Nutty Professor as a character. Michael Jackson was the character of his own movie.
That's fine, but Janet was able to transition.
This boy dreamed about this stuff, woke up, put it on a piece of paper, and made it come to life, and that's epic.
Right, but we're talking about different avenues of making money.
I get the avenue. I'm just saying, like,
Michael, did he? I don't think he ever was in a movie or anything outside of his own. So that means nobody else really saw it for him except for himself, which is great.
Well, I mean, it is great because everybody else saw it and they all supported it and made Michael who he was.
Yeah, but remember we talked about that decline? They weren't.
That's fine. Everybody hits a peak and everybody, you know.
But he peaked kind of early.
He didn't want to peak too quickly.
Yeah, but I feel like his peak was very early, and I mean, if we're talking about...
It wasn't early though, Kamar. You have to remember, we're forgetting about Jackson 5. We're forgetting about this little boy who was tearing it up, and everybody fell in love with, screaming, "When I had you, I treated you bad."
And that's fine, but we're not talking about Michael Jackson. Jackson 5. We're talking about Michael Jackson.
I get that, but that's where it all started. That's where it all started.
To be the king of pop, you peaked very, very quickly. You peaked after 3 albums.
And still to this day, still have one of the top albums of all time.
And that's great, but Britney Spears has one. Is that
don't care? We're not talking about her. We're talking about Michael and Janet.
Right.
So let's focus on the conversation. So Michael takes the cake for me. But
no, answer the question. What's the She Bang? Not She Bang. What's his name? I can't remember. But there's been so many. We'll just say this. There's been so many one-hit wonders that have come out and sold.
He wasn't one of them.
Millions of albums, and millions of singles. Does that mean that they are the greatest?
She Bangs was just that song that was a chart-topping thing because people were excited about it. I mean,
and they were like
Soulja Boy jumping around doing whatever. They're excited about that one song. But we're talking about Michael doing it from a child and then coming back and tearing stuff up and being named the king of pop.
Yeah, that's
where is She Bang? What was he named the king of?
Nothing.
What was Janet named the queen of? Oh, okay.
Again, Michael Jackson peaked very quick.
Did she? Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. I heard it. I didn't know that. I need to see receipts. Okay, go ahead.
That's fine. We'll pull him up after this episode. All right. Michael Jackson, in my opinion, peaked way too quickly. He's an amazing, amazing artist, probably one of the best. However, if we take those, like I said, we take those 3 albums that were major chart-selling blockbuster albums, and we put them against Janet, who was able to have a consistent career throughout her entire career, in my opinion, Janet takes the cake. That's what I say. But hey, we'll leave it up to y'all.
It's all in the facts. Yeah, we'll leave it up to y'all.
We'll leave it up to y'all. Y'all make sure y'all drop down in the comments. Let us know who you agree with. I mean, I know you're going to probably agree with me because I presented the most facts. But if you do happen to
No,
agree,
we didn't.
If you do agree with
he gave opinions, in my opinion, if you want to rewind the tape. In my opinion.
I said that once.
Exactly.
Yeah, anyway, I'm Camarray.
And I'm Zaiah.
And this has been a music report card. Y'all make sure y'all drop down in the comments. Like this video, subscribe, tell somebody else about it, share this. Hear y'all's comments.
We'll see y'all next time.
Yes.